The moment has finally come. We finally know what Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point is going to look like going forward. This is super exciting because it's something we've been waiting for the longest time. Unfortunately, the reason why Top Thrill Dragster is being refurbished and changed into a new experience, i.e. Top Thrill 2, is sad. In 2021, in August specifically, a woman was hit in the head with a metal piece flying from a train that had just hit the brake run. Because of this, Top Thrill Dragster was closed for the rest of the 2021 season, and it didn't open at all in 2022. And then in September of last year, we learned that this ride wasn't going to reopen as Top Thrill Dragster, so that started raising questions. Was this ride going to reopen as something different, or was it going to be removed entirely? This coaster goes 120 miles an hour, goes over 400 feet in the air, and is one of Cedar Point's crown jewels. So we didn't really think that this ride was going to be removed because it's such an icon for the park. That being said, reliability was an issue with this ride, so then the question became, well, this ride isn't very reliable and it just had an accident, so are those two things going to close this attraction down? Well, we learned in January of this year that it was going to reopen, but as something a little different. Cedar Point was using a tagline, a new formula for thrills, but this video that Cedar Point sent out in January still didn't tell us a whole lot, outside of the fact that it would indeed reopen. Another thing we learned from this video was that the top hat was still going to be a part of the ride, as that's pretty much the only thing shown during this video. But the question then became, I know there's a lot of questions surrounding this ride, what else was going to be included with the experience? Well, we can finally stop guessing, as we now know Top Thrill Dragster is going to reopen in 2024 as Top Thrill 2. The ride is still going to feature some of the same elements as the original Top Thrill Dragster, mainly that top hat, but there is one major distinction which we'll get to in a minute. Before that though, it's important to note that the new parts of this experience are going to be manufactured by none other than Zamperla. If you're unfamiliar, this company specializes in flat rides, and the coaster department of their company is pretty limited. Their family coasters, especially the family gravity coasters, have become decently popular, but the thrill coasters have had limited success. They've definitely had more success with rides like their family motorbike launch coasters. So having them do a project like this is just crazy to think about because they've never done anything close to the scale that Top Thrill 2 is. Though I suppose not very many roller coasters are near this scale regardless of manufacturer. So, as promised, let's go over the major change between Top Thrill Dragster and Top Thrill 2, and that is going to be the fact that Top Thrill 2 will have a swing launch sequence. You're going to have 3 launches, the first of which reaches speeds of 74 miles an hour, which is definitely slower than Top Thrill Dragster's first launch before, which reached over 100 miles an hour. You climb up the top hat a little bit, probably somewhere between the 160 to 180 foot range out of the 400, before going backwards at speeds of 101 miles an hour and up the 400 foot tall spike. Now, the height on this coaster is kind of weird because in the front versus the back, you're going to reach different heights at different points during the experience, and it doesn't look like you're going to get anywhere near that 400 foot tall height on the spike. But then you approach your third launch, reaching speeds of 120 miles an hour, and everyone gets to experience that 400 foot tall height on the ride's top hat. This is a part of the ride that was there before, and I do wonder if you're going to feel a transition from the Zamperla track to the Intamin track. I've heard on some rides like Tremors at Silverwood, which has some RMC track mixed with the CCI track, that you can feel the transition there, so I wonder if it's going to be the same thing on Top Thrill 2. I also wonder how this coaster on the Zamperla track with the Zamperla trains is going to ride. Some people have had issues with some of Zamperla's trains, and while these ones do look to be the most comfortable for their thrill coasters, it'll still be interesting. How is it going to handle going 120 miles an hour? That will be the part that I'm intrigued by. I also wonder what operations are going to be like on this coaster. I know they can run up to 3 trains on Top Thrill 2, which isn't terrible, but how fast are the dispatches going to be with those new trains? Are those going to be easy to send out, or are they going to be tougher? We'll see. Remember, this is a prototype, so there probably will be issues, whether it's with the launch system, or it's with the trains, or something else. There will be a few issues and bugs that they have to figure out. Speaking of the launch system, that is another big change, and it was an issue with Top Thrill Dragster. Hydraulic launches are not very reliable. Intamin used this launch to create some crazy launch coasters. This is how we have our Strata coasters, the world's fastest coaster, and some other bonkers ones like Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm. This is probably the most powerful launch system available, but it's not reliable, and that's why it's been phased out in comparison to LSMs and LIMs. Magnetic launches have stood the test of time while hydraulic launches simply haven't. We see that LSMs are less powerful with Top Thrill 2 because it's going to take 3 launches to get to that top speed instead of just the one hydraulic launch. Now, the one positive about this, even though some may be salty about the fact that the launch will be less powerful, is that it is going to extend the ride time by probably about 3 times. Dragster only had 17 seconds of prime ride time. The ride was very simple. Launch, top hat, return to the brakes. That's pretty much it. An adrenaline rush for sure, but not a very long ride, especially because of the line this ride built up. So now you're going to have a ride that has that top hat, that has that launch, but it also has other elements to make it longer. My point being, Top Thrill Dragster looked like a great roller coaster before, and one of the fastest and most extreme ones you're going to find. But when you wait an hour or more for a coaster like this, 17 seconds isn't exactly rewarding, even if it is an adrenaline rush. And I think the added length is going to be one of the bigger positives with Top Thrill 2 in comparison to the original Dragster, even if it comes at expense of that powerful launch to a certain extent. Dragster is still going to be plenty extreme. It still goes up 400 feet in the air, it still reaches speeds of 120 miles an hour. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of problems with this coaster as far as how thrilling it's going to be. Moving on to another aspect of this coaster, we can see that the paint scheme is going to be a little bit different, and I actually really like the change. Top Thrill Dragster before was mostly a red and white paint scheme with yellow supports, but now we're going to get mostly white track with gray supports. Granted, we are going to have some red and white on the top of the top hat and the spike. This is a neat touch to pay homage to the original Top Thrill Dragster. One more final thing to note would be the theming change. It is obviously still racing themed, but it's going to go from drag racing themed to Formula 1. This was something people speculated when a new formula for thrills was announced in that aforementioned video from January. And that appears to be coming to fruition. So overall, Top Thrill 2. My final analysis of it would be that I think there are some good things and some bad things. Of course, this is coming from someone who didn't ride the original Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point, but I think this coaster is going to do a lot of the same things Top Thrill Dragster did and add length and add launches and add a spike. So I think overall I'm okay with the change, even if it's a sad reason for the change. It's such a shame that the reason that this had to happen was because of an incident that this ride had that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. That's just the unfortunate part of it. But I'd love to hear what you guys think of Top Thrill 2 in the comment section below. And if you had the opportunity to ride the original Dragster, do you expect Top Thrill 2 to be better, worse, or about the same as the original ride? I'd love to hear all those things down below, and I will see you guys all next time.